The U.S. tariffs that Donald Trump is putting up are slowing down the rate of credit generation because they are preventing us from creating dollars and sending them out at an exponential rate. And so because the credit generation is being slowed down, the Ponzi scheme is breaking. We are going into a deflationary panic right now.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty in Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for April 8th through April 15th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we feature 2025 1-ounce silver Canadian maples at just $3.49 over spot per ounce. Constitutional or junk silver is just $1.99 over spot per ounce. 1 10th-ounce Platinum Britannia are just $29 over melt, and 1 10th-ounce Gold Britannia are only $27 over melt. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty in Finance. We're delighted to have this returning guest. Phil Lowe is the founder of the Bitter Draft channel on Rumble. He stands up for ordinary people trying to explain economic and monetary principles in everyday language and using metaphors and stories that we can all understand. I appreciate that, and I know a lot of our viewers do as well. Phil, thanks for coming back on Liberty in Finance, today being Monday, April 7th, 2025.
Hi, Dunnigan. Good to see you again.
You we're willing to come on and talk today about a number of topics. The first of which that's on a lot of people's mind, is certainly in the news right now, are tariffs and the shifting landscape of tariffs as being the proposed solution that's being enacted to level the playing field, supposedly on international trade, and that would help strengthen the economic industrial base, et cetera, bring jobs home, and so on. But you are concerned that this is missing the point, the real fundamental rotten core to our monetary apple, not having anything to do with tariffs at the core. What is your point, and what are you trying to make sure that we're not taking our eye off of, as this tariff topic is what's getting up all the air in the room right now?
Sure. So one thing I want to stress is that the news is not going to tell people the truth, because and this is both sides of the news. So the pro-tariff Peter Navarro side is going to say this is all going to work out in the end. The jobs are all going to come. They're all going to come roaring back here. We're going to avoid any major crash. We're all a bunch of geniuses. And the anti-Trump globalist side is saying, oh, he's destroying the monetary system. He's going to ruin everything, and the world's going to end. And the problem they're both missing is that the money is fake and has been fake since 1913, and tariffs are not going to change that. So the tariffs on fake money are not going to make the money any more real, right? So if we tariff exports and we get more, or if we tariff the imports, and or let me rephrase this: if there is free trade and the fake money comes back to us from imports, or from our exports and they're importing, then that is not going to make the money that is coming back in any more real than it was before. And we're going to be, we're still going to be facing the exponential growth of the M2 dollar curve and an eventual hyperinflation and return to the gold standard. So, but let me break this down so that every normal person can understand what I'm saying here. So the argument for the international free trade that everyone makes, and when you take an Econ 101 course and they talk about the international free trade, it presupposes honest money. And a lot of Austrian economists, even Austrian economists, get this wrong, and certainly mainstream economists get this wrong, that we are presupposing the money we are using right now is fine, it's honest. In that model that we use, if you think of two sellers, let's have two sellers they're both selling a car, and one is selling it domestically and the other is also selling it domestically. And they're, for all intents and purposes, they're practically identical cars, but one's a little bit more expensive than the other just due to input costs. But for the user, it's like a Toyota Camry and a Honda Accord or whatever. It's a car to get to A to B, nothing fancy, four-door sedan, not a lot of differences between them. The buyers look at these two cars and they say, oh, Coke and Pepsi, but Coke's a little bit cheaper, so I'm going to go buy the Coke. And nobody bats an eye. No one thinks anything about that. Now let's move one of those car sellers offshore And so we'll have one be a Ford and one is a Toyota, right? Suddenly, you know, everyone's like, oh my God, we can't let these foreigners sell in here. We have to buy American. This, you know, it's your patriotic duty to buy this American car, even though nothing has changed. One car is, you know, a certain amount, you know, let's say it's $1,000 cheaper than the other car, but they're for all intents and purposes identical. Now, the local seller will go to the government and say, oh, they're being unfair over there, whatever, you know, it's slave labor over there. Let's put up tariffs to protect, you know, local businesses and local producers. And the government agrees. And it's, you know, politically, it's somewhat popular. So the tariffs force out the foreign seller. Now, who's hurt by this? The local producer is benefited. The people that are hurt are the foreign seller and the consumer. This is always on the news where you know, one side says only the foreign sellers are hurt. That's the Trump position. You know, consumers aren't. They're going to be even better off than ever. And the you know, the anti-tariff side are saying no. You know, American consumers are bearing the entire brunt of this. Both the foreign seller and the consumer are bearing a portion of it. We don't really know how much. It's beyond the scope of this interview to go into how much. It really has to do with elasticity of supply and demand curves, which is, like I said, beyond the scope of this discussion. But they are both affected by it, and how much is, you know, up in the air. So the local producer is being encouraged to be slothful and uninnovative and uncompetitive. And so let's put this to a thought exercise. So the foreign seller now says, you know what? I'm gonna double down on this. I'm gonna be so competitive. I'm gonna make the best car the world has ever seen. So we're gonna get past this tariff just through sheer competitiveness and innovation. So they cut costs and they make a even more quality car, and the car is even better than you could possibly imagine. And it's blowing the local car out of the water now, right? So even with the tariffs, the foreign seller comes back and they put this car in the market, and it's more, you know, because of the tariffs, it's more expensive than it would be. But with all the innovations and all the competition, it's actually still cheaper and now much better than the local car. What does the local producer do? Does he say, geez, we should compete, we should innovate, we should get better? No, he says, let's run back to the government and get higher tariffs to get this ridiculous foreigner out of here so that they will buy our substandard product. Now, all of the viewers are probably saying, well, that doesn't sound right. I mean, the first tariff, you know, maybe I can make an exception for, but the second one is preventing me from getting a far superior product than I would have been able to get otherwise. And this guy is just being lazy and slothful. He's not being competitive. Both of those tariffs that I just talked about are the same thing. One, I'm just making I'm making a much more clear example than the first example, right? And the idea that if the money stays here, if we just buy local, that we are somehow better off is not true. Without that competition, the local producer is encouraged, like I said, to be, you know, slothful, to be unproductive, to sell substandard products. With the competition, he'll be forced to do better. Now let's suppose this is in this international world that there is no tariffs and this other foreign competitor is winning all the time, right? And so this all presupposes a gold standard. So when I say money, I mean gold here. The money, which I mean gold, is leaving our shores and going over to, let's say, Japan. On a gold standard, when gold leaves one country and goes to another country, what happens to prices in the country the gold has gone to? There is more gold floating around, so prices go up because gold is the medium of exchange. So if there is more medium, then the prices in that medium are higher. And as gold leaves America, the prices go down because there's less gold floating around. So the prices will adjust. That benefit that the Japanese producer had of the American producer goes away as gold balances out. And international trade will eventually balance out so that there's going to be basically equal distribution of gold in the entire world, and prices will be solely based on how competitive you are, right? Now, again, that all presupposes an honest money standard, which we are not in. So the economists, the working man has been saying, okay, you know, the working man in America since the 1970s, let's say the 1970s, when we went off the gold standard, has been saying, okay, when are prices supposed to be rebalanced? This all sounds wonderful. We want to be competitive. We want to compete on the international stage, but the money's leaving. It's going to, we're buying tons of imports. Prices are supposed to adjust so we can be competitive too, so we can produce things too. And the traditional economists and even a lot of Austrians kind of pat the working man on the head and they say, well, you're just not being competitive enough. You're just not trying hard enough, right? The problem is you're not equipped for the international global system. You need to go learn to code or go work in high finance. Manufacturing has just left America. We're a service-based economy now. That is not true. What is happening on the fiat, we are not on a gold standard. We're not on an honest money standard. We are on a fiat dollar Ponzi scheme. And so the debt and dollars must, I say this just about every time I come on your show. The dollars and the debt must grow at exponential rates. They both must go bloop. And so to prevent the system from collapsing, what they have been doing so far is shipping those dollars offshore. Those dollars must leave our shores when we buy imports, and they must never come back. Because if those dollars come back, a couple things will happen. Let's start with the other countries first. When dollars leave our shores, they end up on the asset side of other countries' balance sheets because of the skeleton of the Bretton Woods system. So the Bretton Woods system works. We have a pile of gold in Fort Knox, and we print dollars off of that. And other countries use our dollars to back their balance sheets. So if you go to any other country on earth, they have dollars on the asset side of their balance sheet. When we buy imports and those dollars end up in a country like Thailand or Vietnam or Japan or China, they end up on the central bank's asset side of the balance sheet. And they use those dollars on their balance sheet to print even more currency of their own because it's backing their currency. So as fast as we are printing money, every other country on earth must print their local currency even faster because they have to stay weak against our currency to keep the dollars flowing out and to prevent their exports from coming to us. So if that stops and they put up tariffs, every other country on earth, and this is being complained about loudly right now, every other country on earth is putting up enormous tariffs on American goods and services to prevent the dollars from leaving their shores. The central banks must keep the dollars or their currency blows up and they hyperinflate. So, okay.
I just wanted to ask if I can interrupt. This has been referred to by many, many guests on our show as the United America as exporting its inflation to other countries. Is this what you're describing? Because we create those dollars out of thin air, but then they've got to go somewhere and they've got to not come back. That's how we're exporting our inflation, so we don't feel the brunt of it as sharply as we would had they all stayed here domestically.
Yes, exactly right. I mean, we would have hyperinflated by now if those trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars have left. So if those dollars ever come back, we're gonna blow up overnight. So where was I? The other currencies, yeah, those dollars cannot come back. That's exactly right. We must export our inflation. And the tariffs the U.S. tariffs that Donald Trump is putting up are slowing down the rate of credit generation because they are preventing us from creating dollars and sending them out at an exponential rate. And so because the credit generation is being slowed down, the Ponzi scheme is breaking. We are going into a deflationary panic right now. This is the very start of it, and it's starting in other countries because they are not getting dollars fast. Remember, every other country on earth is printing their currencies faster than we are, and they need dollars to say, look, our currency is backed by dollars. It's fine. Don't worry. Everything's fine, right? Because they're not getting enough dollars, their currencies are collapsing even faster than ours is right now. And they need those dollars, and they're not getting those dollars because Trump has slapped up some tariffs. So the creation of the tariffs, like I said, slows down credit generation and will cause us to go into a deflationary tailspin. If the other countries, if for example, I think Vietnam is coming right now, they're flying a delegation over to try and do a mutual tariff reduction. If everyone lowers tariffs down to zero and we have a perfectly free trade economy using this Ponzi scheme, these other countries will start buying American exports, and then those dollars, because when you buy things in America, you have to pay for them in dollars. So they must take dollars out of their system and send dollars back to America, and then the export goes out. That will collapse. That will cause the local currency to hyperinflate, and those dollars will come back to America, and prices in dollar terms will explode in America. So this is not going to this people like Peter Navarro are saying this is going to somehow we're going to save our domestic stuff. We're going to, we're going to rebalance everything in the world. That will be true, but we have to destroy the dollar first. And this absolutely will destroy the dollar. So I am temporarily, even though I just said all that stuff in the beginning about how bad tariffs are, I am temporarily 100% in favor of these tariffs because they are destroying the Ponzi system. And what I want to tell to your viewers is that as you watch the stock market, burn to the ground in front of us right now, please remember, these numbers are not real. They're figments of a fake Ponzi scheme. And the only real thing is the underlying money, which is gold and silver, and always has been and always will be.
It's a message that our audience and subscribers here already respond to and are very sympathetic with. That sounds like gibberish to the ordinary person on the street who has for 2 or 3 generations been brainwashed into or lulled into sleepwalking and being told the emperor has clothes on when the emperor doesn't. But I thank you for bringing it up here so that people might have one more way of explaining it to those that they care about, that they want to, try to help wake up before it's too late to protect themselves. You also talk about inflation, its impacts on people and on cultures, etc. Rafi Farber, our mutual friend, talks about this a lot, is that inflation is institutionalized dishonesty, dishonest money. It means we have dishonesty in lots of other fields, expertise, etc. You talk about how inflation commoditizes everything and attempts to put us in pods and eating bugs. And if we went back to sound money, those pressures could go away. How is that the case?
Oh, it absolutely will go away. So if you look at what America looked like in 1890, right, or 1900, even as late as 1910, a working man, an upper working class man. I don't want to say any working slob could do this, but a prosperous working class man could afford a bespoke house, not just a house. I mean, a house that was, the designer comes to him and they talk about what they want to build and they talk about the gilding, do they want to put all the flourishings they want to put on the side and the wraparound porch and maybe a stained glass window. That was in the grasp of a prosperous working class man. And this is a house that would feed, that would house his 8 children and his parents and maybe his in-laws too. I mean, these would be big houses. And they were beautiful. I mean, have you ever been in like an older house? Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, they're beautiful.
My family has toured many, not only mansions, but also just historic, reconstructed or preserved villages where you get to see the beautiful porches and parlors district, that sort of thing. So yes, it's really inspiring to see the materials of construction that are used in like Victorian era homes. And, it's interesting. Victorian era came right before the foundation of the Fed. So people could still afford massive hardwood moldings around and carved things on their fireplaces, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, if any of the viewers know what I'm talking about, go to basically any town that was built before 1913, right? There's always a town center, and it's always got these gorgeous buildings in the center of it, and it's the joy of the town. And then the second you leave that center from the area or from the era, and you go into the modern, it's like brutalist architecture, and there's no soul to it. So to go back to what I was saying real quick. So people self-organized in organic villages back then. There was no there was some planning. Washington D.C. and parts of New York were planned, but mostly people are like, oh, there's some land. I want to build a nice house and a nice yard for my large family. I'm going to do that. So they do that, right? And over time, these beautiful little towns and villages would build up. And even in the cities, I mean, if you look at, pictures of New York or Chicago from the 1890s, I mean, the buildings were absolutely gorgeous. Even the industrial buildings, they took the buildings that were factories back then. I mean, factories where they would have smokestacks and things. They're turning them into luxury apartments now. I remember I was in Durham, North Carolina, and they were taking tobacco barns and turning them into luxury apartments, because the tobacco industry kind of withered away. Anyway, so what happened? I'm mostly using architecture and design in this thought experiment because it's ever present and everyone sort of knows what I'm talking about. So post-Fed in 1913, and especially now, this has been building over a long period of time, enormous amounts of credit. I mean, credit thousands of times over where it should be, has allowed firms to grow, and not only allowed them to, it's forced them to grow, because it's really grow or die. You can't be a mom and pop hardware store in this day and age. You must be a Home Depot. Home Depot can generate the credit that allows them to have economies of scale that the local hardware store could never possibly imagine. Now, the problem is this economy of scale is fake. It's an artifice of the inflationary scheme. It's not real. So it's not an organic growth, but because we see it happening, we just say, oh, well, this is just the modern age. This is just technology that has, formed Home Depot and Walmart and driven out the mom and pop local shops. And, maybe there was some artistic beauty to that, and maybe we lost something. But look at what we've gained, right? We've gained the ability to produce 500 houses on a field in a month, and all we had to give up with was the soul of the village, right? So instead of an organic village being built by prosperous businessmen as they accumulated wealth, now this firm comes in, they clear cut a forest, they bulldoze everything completely flat, and then they put up 500 houses, all looking exactly the same. And I live in something not quite that bad, but I will say whenever I visit any of my neighbors, I never have to ask where the bathroom is. I know exactly where it is, anywhere on my street,
There's a lovely song from the late 60s, Little Boxes on the Hillside, and they're all made out of ticky-tack, and they all look just the same. And they go on to talk about the people thinking all just the same as well, because they all went to the university and they all think just the same. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. And so this has been going on a while. Obviously, that song is from the 60s, and people didn't like it back then, and they like it even less now because they're even worse, right? Everything's, if you look at modern architecture, it's almost designed to torture the eye, it seems like. But people think like, oh, because the housing prices are going up, we are somehow getting more house, but we're actually getting much less house for our value, right? So back in the old days, like I said, you could get a bespoke house with stained glass windows, beautiful molding all over everything. And now, despite the house being, hundreds of times more expensive, maybe thousands of times more expensive, you get a box. You get a set of cubes stacked on top of each other that look identical to the other boxes around them. And in fact, we are actually much, much poorer than we were back in the late 1890s. In the 1900s, on a relative basis. Obviously, technology has made things like healthcare and stuff like that, better in some ways. Healthcare might be a bad example, but in some ways, technology has made our lives better. But the inflation has made us much, much poorer in real terms. And when this dollar Ponzi breaks, that is going to be exposed, because one concept the Austrians talk about a lot is inflation creates what's called the illusion of prosperity, where you think you are wealthier because your numbers on the stock market are going up, but you are in fact not wealthier. And in fact, you've been robbed. And we have been robbed. And that's why part of the effect of us being robbed is we're living in cubes. And the ultimate destination was what Klaus Schwab was thinking. It's like, oh, well, if we get everyone to just live in pods and eat bugs, right? That's the ultimate economy of scale, right? We have destroyed, individualism and the family. Everyone's living in brutalist boxes, and they get their bug protein powder for the week. Now, I do want to give some optimism. When this Ponzi blows, we are going to go back to organic villages. And, I don't know what the existing stuff, I don't know what's going to happen to the existing stuff, because I don't think people are going to want to live in the row houses, but they may not have much choice. But moving forward, over a long period of time, I think we're going to be developing, villages again and cities, because that's just how people live. And the cities are going to be prosperous once again. And, the old buildings will eventually be torn down and replaced with aesthetic beauty. And this does not just apply to architecture, right? If you look at our food, right? When you drive anywhere on the highways and you stop for lunch, you have the same options available to you anywhere you go. You have Burger King, Wendy's.
It is a culinary desert.
Yes, you have Burger King, Wendy's, McDonald's, and if you're lucky, you can get a Hardee's or an Arby's or something, or a Taco Bell, right? But when this blows, when you drive from one town to another, you're going to get whatever that local town produces, and some of it's going to be best food you ever had in your life. Now, when there's an increase in variety, you might get some lady who doesn't know how to cook running the shop, and you don't necessarily know that when you go in to eat. But in general, competition will produce better, more innovative food, and it's going to be much more localized, like we used to. I mean, in the old days, when you traveled along the coastline in North Carolina, you got seafood for lunch. That was what was available on the road. You got a po' boy. That's good. The McDonald's and the Burger Kings are all going to go away. I mean, they may still exist, but they're not going to be the only thing that is possible to eat on your trip. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. These mega suppliers, the monolithic big ag and big food producers, and we've had teaching farmer Joel Salatin of Polyface Farms on our channel multiple times, and he talks about that, how this economies of scale and the USDA, which he calls the USDA, as he was on Trump's potential pick for head of part of the USDA, ended up not getting selected, but he brings a lot of wisdom to things that he would change at the USDA. One of the things he points out there is that the simple error of thinking that efficiency as a goal in itself is what's going to bring prosperity means, now you can have a single inspector watching a huge factory and can view, millions of pounds of meat per hour being no consideration to whether the cows that were being processed there were raised under humane, healthful conditions and were slaughtered in a way that kept them calm, so they didn't release all these stress hormones into their meat and everything. And so, yes, you can move more efficiently, but that's you might lose the taste, the healthfulness, all kinds of things along the way. Everybody's getting repetitive motion injuries who works there, and that economy of scale causes massive concentration, which causes actually a lot of fragility. We've interviewed Steve St. Angelo from the SRS Rocco report. He talks about that supposedly complex societies make exponentially more complex supply chains and systems that are exponentially more brittle and fragile, rather than the robustness of having all these small cottage scale and town village scale production and processing of food, and the variety and the freshness and everything that goes with it. So your points are multifold in their implications, that we've sacrificed so much at the altar of what we call efficiency.
Yeah, and that I do want to. The process of reverting is going to be painful, and that's the scary part, is when it blows up and you have to start back from where you are. That's a real process. But on the other side, everyone stay optimistic. I want to give everybody optimism. The free market will always attempt to make us more prosperous than ever before. And if we just trust the markets, we will get there. We will get to prosperity not seen since the 1890s.
So one thing I want to plug here too is that idea of the wealth of knowledge that was built over centuries and millennia has been largely forgotten by most people who've just handed over. They've delegated everything to so-called experts, which means you're eating whatever Cisco and Cargill and Archer Daniels Midland thinks that you should, or Klaus Schwab thinks you should eat bugs or whatever. But those skills haven't been lost entirely, and you'll find in your local community, the Beekeepers Association and the Organic Growers Association, and you can get plugged in and get connected with these people, and you can even order delivery of wholesome family-raised foods from all over. Even if it's not real local to you right now, you can get connected with that. And we've just in the last week randomly met two people who either themselves were living on a multi-acre family compound or had a daughter or son that was starting up homesteading and doing hobby farming and that sort of thing. So that's another thing. Joel Salatin, his daughter, has a website called eagerfarmer.com, where young people who have a passion for raising healthy on a small scale food producing can get access to land that they don't have to buy outright, because there's probably an aging farmer on there whose children moved to the city and nobody's interested in farming it, and better that than it going to, well, Bill Gates or some huge giant. So anyway, that there's that preparedness aspect. And folks, if you look on our channel, Liberty and Finance, remember our roots are reluctant preppers. We have a playlist called Home Sweet Prepared Home with lots of these just nuggets of gold wisdom from those who are doing it and making it happen on a small scale. And you can too. One of Joel Salatin's interviews is called Feeding Your Family on 0 Acres. It's a very eye-opening. So Phil, that's great to remind people that not all is lost. And in fact, we can start now learning how to do this stuff, and even doing it in a small way is a good start. And connecting with those around us in our community who are already have the wisdom, have the knowledge, know how to get it done and make it successful.
Big thing the farmers are going to need on the other side is capital. So the stackers here, you will be providing local farmers capital because the international, we're not going to be getting avocados from Brazil anymore. We're going to have to produce locally, and the farmers are going to have unbelievable demand, but they're going to need capital to raise to triple their output in a year. So we will provide that capital.
And you encourage your local healthy small producers by patronizing them and helping be a local market for them. So, and right now, at least while we still have some transportation infrastructure, you can even be a not so local market for those and help those who are doing the right thing, even if they're not in your local community. Phil, you also talk about something that's near and dear to the hearts of our audience, and that's what should they put their value in if it's not the paper dollars and it's not the electronic dollars and it's not necessarily exposed to the banking system and all this counterparty risk or the stock market, et cetera. If they want to own something real, then, for example, gold and silver, sound money, can be a way of preserving value and preserving it through time much more effectively. And yet you say that certain types of guidance that people may be exposed to, saying, oh, you've got to get collectible coins because that's where you're really going to come through this reset better. And frankly, there are a number of clients every week and every month. Andy and I just did 2 interviews over the past 2 months where we keep getting heartbreaking stories from people who've had their arms twisted by sales pitches that's the narrative. You've got to own these special things if you're really going to get ahead. And you're saying, not true. And that's not even the best way, the most efficient way to look out for your financial well-being going forward. Why do you say that?
Yeah, that's not true at all. So the case that there's several cases they're making for pre-33 gold, or sorry, I should say other rare coins as well. But the case for pre-33 gold is that when FDR seized all the gold, the pre-33 gold was listed as collectibles and therefore was not subject to seizure at that time. The thought that if the government now wanted to go grab everyone's gold and start going door to door, right? So they're going door to door, they're kicking down your door, they're cuffing you, and they're taking a backhoe to your backyard to go dig up your stash. And you're saying, well, actually, my gold's pre-33. And they're going to go, oh, no, we can't touch this gold. That's preposterous, right? If your fear is government seizure, then pre-33 gold is the most expensive and least additional security. You're paying the most for the least additional security that you could possibly get. If they want the gold, they'll take the gold. I mean, if they can get their hands on it, right? That's not the pre-33 isn't doing anything for your additional security. If that is a concern of yours, you should either bury it yourself somewhere, or you should offshore your gold, maybe in the Cayman Islands or something like that. Those are alternatives that are more cost effective than proudly displaying your pre-1933 gold and thinking that is somehow bulletproof. Additionally, there are also other rare coins that sellers often try to push on viewers, and you should reject those, in my opinion. This is just my opinion. This is not financial advice, of course. In my opinion, there is nothing particularly there that is going to have any resale ability when you go to try and turn that into another thing, whether that is food or land or a car, whatever else. You're going to get whatever the melt value is of that metal, and you're not going to get much more than that. That's what money does. Money is a standard unit of a thing, right? So you're just going to get whatever the money value is. If somebody says, I want 50 ounces of gold and whatever, whether the dollar is an ounce of gold or not, then you have to give him 50 ounces of, or let me say silver. 50 ounces of gold is a lot. 50 ounces. If someone says, I want 50 ounces of silver, and you have, $1 is an ounce of silver, and you have to give them 50 ounces of silver, trying to pass off a rare coin saying, oh yeah, this is from Guam, or this, what's that island, Nauru? This rare coin from Nauru is really worth 2 or 3 times what a normal dollar is worth. That you're not going to get anywhere with that, I promise. So I would stick to bullion, if you want coins, then just stick to non-proof eagles or whatever the lowest denomination of coin you can get is, or lowest value coin you can get is. You don't need to pay these extra premiums. You can just get, the basic stuff and you will be absolutely fine. Junk silver is also great.
Yeah, it's interesting. We interview Dr. Edwin Vieira, who's a constitutional attorney. He's also the author of the book Pieces of Eight, about the origins of coinage in history and also in the United States. And he talks about how the mints, like the U.S. Mint, emerged as a way of standard weights and measures. So when you have honest money, and gold and silver are your ways of, are the means of exchange, and somebody shows up with a strange odd piece or a nugget or a wire or a sheet or whatever, it's very difficult to know the purity. It's difficult to know the exact weight and everything. But if people have clipped edges of coins, et cetera, as they did in ancient Rome and so on. But having coins minted by the U.S. Mint, for example, was a way of coming up with just standardized units of weight and measure for money, because money when money is real things like gold and silver, then it falls into standard units of weights and measure for honest trade. So he says people know the source, they know the purity, they know the weight, and that makes this thing is a lot faster and easier for interchange, because you don't have to first examine whether the money is real before you go on. I mean, sure, when you're giving a shoe shine as underdog and the guy hands you a coin, you can bite it and hope it puts a dent in there. But that's a little test that Underdog did to make sure he was getting paid with real money. But it's not always trivially easy to test it, and therefore knowing where the source was simplifies trade. So that's a good point. It's not because you have to have this rare and special different. Usually from those who've called in, that's a way for the sellers to line their pockets at your expense.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we've had some rare opportunities where we were able to get hold of a big buy of pre-33 stuff, and we could sell it for the same price as modern bullion. And it's like, well, why not? If you like that, or if you have any affinity towards that, and you can get it for the same price based on melt value as you would without paying that big added premium, then why not go for it? But yeah, that's one of the hallmarks of predatory dealers, is trying to talk you up into something that's rare and collectible, and you can't shop around. But you can bet that after you've accumulated your nest egg over your whole career, they're going to probably get about half of that in about an hour if you fall prey to that sales pitch.
Yeah, that's really scummy behavior of people to rob others like that, I have to say.
Well, Phil, you always bring a easily relatable way of explaining things and understanding things. If people want to hear, because you've written on and done videos on a lot of topics on your Bitter Draft channel, where will they find that, and what will they find there?
Sure. You can find me on Rumble at The Bitter Draft, and that's the old spelling of draft, D-R-A-U-G-H-T. Link will be in the description, I'm sure. And you can find me on my X account, same The Bitter Draft, and you can email me at thebitterdraft@gmail.com. And I do post videos on YouTube just for the people. Apparently, there are people who cannot access Rumble in other countries, and they have told me they really appreciate me posting on YouTube as well. So I do that for them. However, I am trying to avoid, I don't like the way YouTube behaved in the past, particularly with, around the mysterious virus of unknown origin times. So I'm trying to promote more free speech platforms. So I prefer everyone to contact me on Rumble if they want to view my channel and interact with me.
Great. And so if you want to find how to get to Phil, look in the description of this video. You'll see a link to his pages where you can reach him more directly. And Phil, as always, just thank you for being here and keeping us educated and informed on liberty and finance.
Thank you very much, Dunnigan. Take care.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and these are the Miles Franklin Weekly Specials for April 8th through April 15th, 2025, while supplies last. First this week, we feature 2025 1-ounce silver Canadian maples at just $3.49 over spot per ounce. Constitutional or junk silver is just $1.99 over spot per ounce. 1/10 ounce Platinum Britannia are just $29 over melt, and 1/10 ounce Gold Britannia are only $27 over melt. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.